Probably right. I just didn't remember to post Tuesday's lecture yet. All right, so what have we got here? This is what? A demand decrease. Okay? Less scarce as a result of a demand decrease. So here we've got our original price. Now there's what? There's a surplus. Okay? Quantity supplied hasn't changed at this price until the price changes. Now the quantity demanded is less. There's more sitting out there than is selling. Okay, that will drive the price down. As the price declines, some additional folks want it, and some of the original amount supplied drops off. Okay, new equilibrium. I call it price 2 because there's a decrease in quantity in this case, and then it rebounds some on the demand side because of the lower price. And it declines in terms of the quantity supplied. Are we journeying on a river in Africa, any of you? Get used to that metaphor sooner or later. See, part of it is, kind of this deal here. Trying to push, pull, kick, not literally, but metaphorically, somehow get you to ask the questions that are going through your head. Because not only will you do yourself a favor, you're going to do a bunch of other people a favor, because there's some people, I think you could probably just hang them someplace and they still wouldn't ask questions. Somehow you're trained. I know one of the things that I do on my research side is study K through 12 school systems. And yeah, that about beats you to death there to keep your mouth shut. See, now and then you go into college and your professor, please ask questions. And, please, what are you? I was supposed to be quiet. No. Things change when you become an adult. Right? Things change when you become an aspiring professional. You're not just a little boy or a little girl anymore that's supposed to sit quietly and listen. It worked, sort of. And remember, thumbs up or down when we're, as we go along. Yes.
On the graph you just discussed, did you say that's the surplus? Because isn't it a shortage instead of when the demand decreases? That dot is above 500.
No, if the demand decreases, we're going to have a surplus. I think we're on, right? Because less is desired than before, and so suddenly it's not moving, the product is not moving like it used to.
Oh, I was reading it upside down. Okay, got it.
Yes?
So if that's a demand decrease and it's a surplus, is it a decrease in the quantity or an increase in quantity?
Well, in the final analysis, okay, so at first, there's a decrease in the quantity demanded, right? Okay, and then there's an increase in the quantity demanded back a little bit because of the lower price. Now see this little shift here, this is contrary to what it says on some of my later slides, because these are slides produced by the publisher, and I don't agree with them on everything. And I left it there because it's in the book too, and so I want to talk about it. Okay, because they say that a change in quantity demanded can only occur if there's a change in the price. No, that's not right. A change in quantity demanded will occur if there's a change in the price, but that's not the only way it can happen. Right? You just see it right here. Right? At the original price, the quantity demanded is now lower because the income is lower, or the price of a consumption substitute went, what, down? See, that would cause this, right? Those are all things you need to think through. Right? What are all the things that could cause this? That's good practice to go over that list of 7 things. Right? Oh, let's see. If this is an inferior good, right? This could happen if there is an increase in income. Otherwise, if there's an increase in income, you'd get that. But if this is an inferior good, you'd get this. Okay? Or a change in tastes and preferences. Now suddenly, yuck, right? Decreased demand. Okay? A higher price for a consumption substitute. What's that? Something that could replace this. A higher price. Higher price. Whoops. No, a lower price. I got it backwards there. No, I had it right the first time. A higher price causes... Start over. There's reduced demand for this if the consumption substitute gets cheaper, right? Is that right? Wrong? Which way did I get it right? Yeah. Right? If something else is cheaper, you buy more of that and less of this. Okay? Now, what rule did I violate? I just realized that I told you to follow. Don't do it in the abstract. Think of real things, and then you won't mess it up. Okay, so what's a good example of consumption substitutes? Let's see, things that you could use in place of each other. Apples and oranges. Okay, so what was the other one? Apples and pears. Okay, so let's say this is pears. Okay, I got it backwards because I was thinking just in the abstract, because there's different ways of, things going up and something else going down. Okay, so how would this happen to pears if apples got cheaper? Right, because people would then use apples more often where they otherwise might have used a pear. Okay, those are consumption substitutes. All right, so there's a surplus, not suddenly because we made more, but because we're making the same amount and people aren't buying as much of it as they used to. Okay, and then that will drive the price down. Okay, so yeah, you need to practice all that semantic stuff about changes in demand. Not yet a change in quantity demanded. Okay, but then yes, then a change in the quantity demanded. Okay, first there's the shift, then there's the change in demand because they don't want as much at the same price as before. Okay, and then there's an increase in the quantity demanded, not all the way back to the original, but to Q2, because the price is going to be falling. Okay, and then there's a decrease in the quantity supplied. No change in the supply here, but a change in the quantity supplied once the price starts to fall. Very good. Okay, so a lesson learned in front of 100 people here that I already told you once and forgot myself. Don't do it in the abstract, okay, when you're thinking substitutes and complements and all that. Okay, and remember there's two kinds. Consumption substitutes, production substitutes, consumption complements, production complements. Lots of work to keep all that straight. All right, and here's the one that's going on most of the time for most things. Yes, some things become obsolete and then the demand decreases. But for most things, because our incomes are going up collectively and hopefully individually, and because there are more of us, most things there's an increased demand over time. Okay, so what happens then is, okay, fine, that's stable for a while, and now suddenly it's selling faster than it used to, and the quantity demanded is more than the quantity supplied. We have a shortage, and the price goes up, and then, so why isn't the price of everything going up? Well, because there's a supply response that's created by this higher price. Okay, and you've read your book now, you know that it discusses double shifts. Okay, so all of this is about the short run role of price change, to ration out what's available. Okay, to clear the market, another way of saying the same thing. Okay, so here we have, okay, that's happened, prices increased. Now we get into the second major thing that the price system does. And as I said, it's just unbelievable, it's magic, and we all take it for granted because it's going all around us all the time for gazillions of goods and services, until somebody interferes with the process, okay? Until somebody short circuits the price changing process. And then we can't take it for granted anymore, because then we're either flooded with goods that we don't know what to do with, like in the case of agricultural subsidies, where we artificially hold the price above the equilibrium and suddenly we're just buried in milk and cheese and corn and cotton and whatever because there's a surplus and we keep having to buy it to support the price. Or more commonly, we imagine that we can alleviate our budget difficulties by voting to cap the price of something, and then now we can't find it to buy it anymore because we created a shortage, and by taking the profit out of some of it, the shortage keeps getting worse over time. All right, so what happens here? Okay, so the price goes up, and hey, that used to be just fine for most folks, the P0, or it wouldn't have been an equilibrium price, and now suddenly the price is even higher. Okay, so the folks that were doing fine at this price now are making money hand over fist at the new price, and so that attracts competitors. Okay, so the second half of the shift, unless industry expansion drives up the cost of making the good, the supply shift, oops, hold on, don't draw that yet. Another force of habit mistake. Okay, in fact, no, hold on one more time. Let me just to get the sequence right here, put a 3 there. You see, first thing that happens is the shortage. Okay, the second thing that happens is the price increase. And because of the price increase, then the supply increases. See, which shifter is that? The number of sellers. Right? That's fixed in the short run. But the number of sellers is increased by this higher price that enhances profit. Okay, so again, let me repeat. Unless something about the increased quantity changes the cost per unit of making the good, the net effect of all of this will be to restore the original price. Okay, say the same thing again. Less industry expansion, in this case, makes it either cheaper or more expensive to make the good. Market entry will occur until the old price is restored. Okay, so this is a case that's discussed in your textbook that says if there's a supply shift and a demand shift in the same direction, the price effect is ambiguous. Remember reading that in there? This is, again, one of those river in Africa things in there. I guarantee if you read that in there, a goodly fraction of you said, what? Huh? Okay, be a good student and write that down and bring that to class for us. And help all the other people that have their hands glued to their sides that won't ask a question. You're going to help them out. Help me too, because then I know what to clarify better than if I just guess based on my experience. Okay, so if the demand and supply shift in the same direction, the price effect is ambiguous. Quantity effect, no ambiguity there. A demand increase, which is going to trigger a supply increase, is going to expand the industry. Q is going to be bigger. Oops. Yeah. Put this down here. Yes. Okay, give me a second. I'll try a different set of words. Which part of it? The whole thing? No. Oh, okay. I put it here because I said suppose there's no effect on the manufacturing costs as a result of manufacturing more. And in a minute I'll give an example of why that might not be the case. But most of the time, the increased demand, the expansion of the market doesn't change what it costs to make the good per unit. And the total cost, of course, of making more is more. But if it doesn't change the cost per unit, then the market process will restore the original level of profitability. See, businesses distribute themselves across the economy according to where the profit is greatest. So the long-run equilibrium for that distribution is for the profit level to be about the same across industries. Right? Because if one industry is looking more profitable than another, there'll be movement of resources from the relatively less profitable to the relatively more profitable industry. You may never have thought about that, but that's duh, right? Businesses are out there to make money. And if one industry looks more profitable than another one, resources are going to move from where there's less profit to where there's more profit. Right? Simply because those greedy capitalists are trying to figure out a way to make more money. Yeah, there they are. Yes? In terms of me explaining it this way, I may have erred. I mean, it may not. Maybe I shouldn't have. But what I'm trying to get across is that this supply shift happens later than this demand shift. See, I love that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm in the teaching bit, to see that reaction. Oh, I got it. Okay, and see, and she got it because of your question. See, isn't that cool? See, and other people just don't react quite as obviously as you do. And that's kind of sad because it takes some of the fun out of it. Wow, more questions. See, I got some lights to turn on here. Okay, cool, yes.
So does the supply shift in the long run or short run?
Yeah, well, in this case, the shifter is the number of sellers. That's fixed in the short run. So it's a long run thing that's going on. Yeah. So my drawing it with the numbers here, I'm just trying to get the chronology right. The supply shift happens well after the demand shift. The demand shift happens, then the price changes, then the supply changes. Felix, I think I remember your name. Hey, cool.
Okay, so on the second and first graphs,
Yeah.
since the supply changes and therefore you draw a new demand graph, right?
No, not necessarily. It's not quite as clear cut. You mean that the demand is going to shift to restore the price? No. Because, see, on the supply side, there might have been, the reason for the shift might have been because of the cost of making the good changed. So there is a change in the quantity demanded, but go through the list. See, this is important for y'all to do this, to practice. You've got that list of shifters. Copy that one slide on the PowerPoint for sure, if no other, the list of the 7 shifters. Go through the list and say, okay, is anything that happened there going to affect one of these things? See, in this case, you go through the supply list, you go, there's the 7 things. Is there anything about what's going on here, the price increase and the demand change, that's going to affect one of those shifters on the supply side? And the answer is yes. We've made it more profitable to produce this good. Okay, that's going to attract additional sellers. Supply increase. Now, over here, I didn't go through that list myself yet just to make sure, but I don't think there's anything affected on the demand side other than the price is lower and the quantity demanded has changed. We didn't change taste and preferences. We didn't change income. We didn't change the price of any related goods, consumption substitutes or complements. We didn't change the weather. Okay, that's what I mean by going through the list. Okay, the 7 things on that list. Nothing about that supply shift does anything to any of those 7 demand shifters, I think. Now, in the long term, if the price stays high, it's possible people's tastes and preferences will change because they're not consuming it as often anymore. Okay, so that's possible. By the way, I'm going to remind you again, I like thinking students, which means I like question protest. It's, there's different ways to see things. Okay, so when you take the exam and you get one wrong, you think, doggone it, this is reasonable, your wrong answer. Make the case. Practice creasing your gray matter. Send me an email that says, Doc, I think, I should send you the little forms that I have. But it's basically what you're going to say is you have a legitimate reason, grounded in the textbook or the lecture or something like that, for the answer you gave. And if I agree with you, I will restore some or all of the credit. I almost always restore some of the credit just to get you, because I like you to try. But to get full credit, you have to make a good, strong case that, hey, your answer is reasonable. It's well grounded in what we've been talking about. Question back there, yes?
Yes, so as the cost of production lowers, the supply curve is going to go to the right?
Say that again?
So then when the cost of production lowers,
yes. Reduced cost of production increases supply, which means that's a shift, not the left-handmost graph, but the second from the left there with the supply. Yeah, that's something, again, you can't just say, oh, yeah, I got it, but you got to draw the graph a few times and see it. And what I mean by seeing it is, in this case, your instincts are saying, oh, that we lowered the line, but there's more available at the original price. So that's an increase in supply. You got to go through that test to avoid error. Again, remember, on Tuesday, you're going to have 80 minutes to do, I think I have 55 questions on there. Okay? So you got to average about 1.5 minutes a question. So if you're struggling through some of this stuff and you don't have your ducks in a row and you're kind of still trying to learn it on the fly, you're going to run out of time. Okay? So that's why you have to practice going through each of these things. And not just saying, I think I can figure this out. No, figure it out in advance. Make it get to in advance. You don't have time to stagger your way through it on Tuesday. Felix, question.
So therefore you would say that price of production lowers and then there we have an increase in supply?
Cost of production, I'm just repeating so other people can hear. Yeah, if some aspect of producing the good it becomes cheaper, okay, that increases the supply of the good, which means more will be available at any given price. Okay?
We could also say that maybe the price would be at a lower overall sale price and then...
Yeah, you go through the 7 shifters. The only one that's a possibility as a demand shift is if the price stays lower, more people may get used to consuming this so that in the future, if the demand were, they would want more at the same price than they did before. So it's possible. It's not. It's something that's a reach that. This is for sure the one on the right there. This is proven time, and this is what drives the whole economy. Okay, price changes, profit changes, firms enter and exit. Okay, that's why we don't need central planning, okay, because we have the price system. The firms already know where to allocate their resources. We don't need to tell them by government edict. Okay, and by the way, if you ever want a picture that shows clearly the difference between central planning and what this is called decentralized planning through the price system, Google Korea at night. South Korea looks like an island from a satellite photo at night because the northern half of the peninsula is dark. There are more lights in the Sea of Japan from fishing boats at night than there is in North Korea, and that's because North Korea is a centrally planned economy, and they're poor, really, 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 really poor. And then South Korea is a capitalist, free market economy, and they're relatively much wealthier, close to our level of per capita income. Okay? So that's a good way to demonstrate that to somebody else. Is like, here's central planning, like our school system, it's centrally planned. Here's decentralized planning.
Well, is it accurate to think that the supply, the shift, when I'm working on my graph, so the shift always precedes the price change?
Exactly. Well, I shouldn't say always. The government can mandate a higher or lower price and has at times. So it's possible for the price to change without the shift, but 99.9% of the time, prices of something has changed because of a shift in demand or supply. Right? Like for the minimum wage, okay, is a government mandate of a minimum price. That happens without a shift. That raises the price of unskilled labor, okay, or low-skilled labor. A rent control is a ceiling on what landlords can charge for apartments. That's a way for the price of something to come down without a shift. Okay? But short of some government edict mandating a higher or lower price, it's a shift in supply or demand that will drive price increase. See, because the sellers, they don't get emails that say lower or raise your price. The only way they know to raise or lower their price is if their output is moving faster or slower than it used to. Yes?
On the third graph,
Mm-hmm.
would
Okay, where it says pairs?
yes,
Okay.
after everything happens, just like the fourth graph, would there be a decreased shift in supply because of low profit?
Bingo. Yep. 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 The price decrease for pears is saying, you know, folks are not that interested in eating pears as much as they used to be for whatever reason. Now, if it's just temporary because the price of apples has come down for a while, it's not going to do that. And think about pears, right? I mean, it takes a while to grow a tree for pears. You can't quickly get in or out of that business. But if there's a long-term change in demand, maybe the study comes out that says there's something in pears that's not good for you. Okay, that'll quickly reduce the demand for it. And then it's not going to. And if that's true, then it's not going to bounce back. And that means if you're in the pear business, your profits are not going to look as good as they used to. And some of the people with pear orchards will decide that there's better things to do with that land, and they'll plow down their pear trees and grow something else. Yes?
So what would be the next step with the pear? The demand decrease.
Right? So if we had that little scenario that I just made up, what would happen is some of the folks would get out of the pear business and they would, the supply would decrease to restore the original price. You think of restore the, yeah, in other words, pears would be so rare that some folks would still want them despite the bad news about their health effects, so that those still growing pears would still make about the much same profit as they used to. But to achieve that result with lower demand means there's got to be a lot less pears out there. Again, unless something's happened by the change in the industry size to change the cost of making pears. A study that says pears are bad for you doesn't have any effect on the cost of making pears. Yes?
Can you explain the fourth graph again?
This last one?
Yeah.
Okay. A fourth means this way. Okay. Yeah. For most goods, most of the time, the demand is increasing because the population is going up and because per capita income is rising. Two of the demand shifters. Okay. So unless one of the other demand shifters is pushing in the other direction, this is what's going on most of the time, okay? So the price creeps upward because of that over time. And as it does, that industry looks more and more profitable to those figuring out how to make a living. Okay, and as a result, as the price creeps upward, so does the supply line creep rightward. Okay, increase, move to the right. Okay, so I made it as kind of a bang, bang kind of a thing. But what's really going on is more like a little conveyor belt kind of a deal. Okay, and then at the same time, that. Cool, all right. This is a lot more fun than going through PowerPoint slides, right? They're up there, they're on the internet for you to go through already. Okay, but I'm paid to fill up the 75 minutes, so that's what I do unless there's questions. Please, more questions. Okay, you've read all this stuff in the book already. Okay, you know whether you're getting it or not. Okay, and you might know better after I go over one of them if I have to. Okay, so you should come to class with questions, and then we can have a conversation. And if you're shy, you can count on enough other people to ask the questions. Okay, but we need some extroverts to make up for the rest of us introverts. We're all different, so it's just some people are just not gonna ask. But I know there's enough extroverts out there to drive this. Yes.
Can you explain ambiguity again?
Ambiguity means it means from the information given, we just can't tell for sure. In other words, if a question on a test or PowerPoint or on a top hat or something says the demand increases and the supply increases, that's not enough information to know whether the price is going to go up or down. Okay, it's enough information to know the equilibrium quantity is going to increase. Think of it like a tug of war. Okay, if the supply increases and the demand increases, there's two people on one end of the tug of war and nobody on the other side. Which way is it going? This way. Okay? Okay, because both the supply increase and the demand increase are pulling the same direction. Higher for quantity. Okay, higher plus higher equals higher. Okay, but on the price side, the demand increase is pushing this way on price. The demand increase is pushing up on price, and the supply increase is pushing down on price. So now you got the tug of war thing with somebody pulling one direction and somebody else pulling the other, and depends on who's stronger, right? Okay, so in this case, it means it depends on which shift is bigger. So unless you're given information, comes up later on a slide if we get to it, unless there's information there about the relative magnitudes, I think that's what it says in those words. Unless we have information about the relative magnitudes of two shifts going on at the same time, or one following the other one, as I have drawn up there, we have some ambiguity on one side or the other. We only will have ambiguity on one side. Okay? If you have two shifts, they'll always pull in the same direction for either quantity or for price. Okay? So again, if the shifts are the same direction, quantity will change that direction. Price, we don't know without knowing relative magnitudes. If they're pulling in, if the demand increases and the supply decreases, what is that going to do? Definitely going to raise the price. No ambiguity there. Right? We've made it scarce two ways. Right? Less of it and people want it more. Price is going to go up. We don't know whether the equilibrium quantity is going to go up or down unless we have information on the relative size of those competing pushes. Okay? So again, if supply and demand change in the same direction, price will be ambiguous, but the quantity will move in that direction, whatever it is. If they move in opposite directions, price change will be obvious, non-ambiguous, and then the quantity change will be unknown. So, for example, if we had here we've got a supply increase. Suppose we have a demand decrease. Okay, so let me add that. You might want to draw another graph. Leave this one alone. I'll just work with this one. Okay, so a supply increase, a demand decrease. Okay, so what's going on here? Oh, let's see. Here's our S0, and here's our new. See, now it doesn't look ambiguous because I happen to draw the demand shift smaller than the supply shift, right? Because it looks, right, it's more, but it's not much more. Price is definitely lower. No question about that, right? Demand decrease and supply increase both push down on the price. One pushed up on the quantity, and the other one pushed down on the quantity. Magnitudes were not identical, so the quantity did increase a little bit. Okay, so here's that. Sometimes supply and demand both change. And I'm just going through here. I like going over it conversationally like we're doing. There's a few things in here where I want to remember if I wanted to clarify based on experience. Okay, so we here it is. Like I said, you have the PowerPoints. We've been going over this for like several minutes. Here it is written down for you. So you didn't need to write it down. You just needed to think about it and resolve your river in Africa journey there on whether you get it or not. Okay, there's that tug of war thing, that last bullet point that pushed up there. Okay, relative magnitude, right? Here, right, the supply shift was a lot bigger than the demand shift. Okay, so the new equilibrium quantity was a little bigger. Doesn't hurt to go over these PowerPoints before class sometimes. Well, I go over them, but you could too. All right, just talked about this, and there it is. Okay, again, much more fun to go over this by way of answering questions than to read this slide to you. Okay, that's the tug of war thing. The ambiguity arises because you get a tug of war and one side pulling one way and the other side pulling the other way. Okay, here's the graph. Okay, so that's kind of like my fourth graph there. That's the biggie for the economy as a whole, because that's what's going on in most markets most of the time. There's demand increase, and then followed by supply increase. Typically, the old price is around, or the new price is around the same as the old price, unless something about the expansion of the market has changed the production. Oh, I was going to give an example on how that happens. Suppose you've got an industrial park out there somewhere, like down by Toyota. Okay? And so more and more tenants come into the industrial park. Suddenly the railroad realizes there's some money to be made by sticking a railroad spur into there. Right? Maybe when it was small, it wasn't worth it. Right? The railroad doing the marginal analysis thing that we talked about back in chapter 1. Right? Is there enough additional business to warrant the cost of several more miles of track into there? Oh, now that it's bigger, okay, now it's worth it. Okay, so they do their marginal analysis thing. Bingo, they stick a railroad spur in there. Suddenly everybody's transportation costs in the industrial park is lower. You see? That's not exactly like this because we're not talking about the expansion of a single market, but it's kind of the same idea. Sometimes bigger creates some situations that lower the cost of production. Economies of scale. Okay, in that case, it's external economies of scale. But that's for later in the semester to some extent, or mostly for other courses. Sorry to throw some terminology out there you don't need to know for the moment. Okay. I say that a lot, and again, I'm asking, not telling. Okay, so what do we got going on there? Aha! See, the price rises because the change in demand is larger than the change. So, you see this slide here, this would be a case where the new equilibrium price is higher. How would that be? Expansion of the market maybe did increase the cost of producing the good. Maybe the expansion of the market competed up the price of a key resource. Like expansion of software engineering competes up the price of software engineers. Okay, and so the market entry that occurred at the new price wasn't able to drive the price all the way back down to where it was because they had to pay more for the software engineers than they were used to, because of the increased demand for the software engineers. And it takes 4 or 5 years to get a degree in that, right? So the market can expand. It can take quite a while to increase the supply of some of the resources to make some things. Okay, so that would be a reason why you might see that. Okay, so here's a nice table. Are you going to memorize this table? I hope not. Now, what I hope you're going to do is draw 9 graphs. Well, you don't need to draw the upper left-hand one. P the same, Q the same, right? Nothing's changed. I mean, you need to draw that as the starting point of the other 8. Okay? Draw graphs, lots of graphs. Buy graph paper. Think your way through what you're doing. Don't mindlessly, mind-numbingly, painfully memorize something you don't understand. Okay, so you'll draw 8 graphs, I hope, based on this table. Right? And then based on the shift, then you'll see, okay, what did I draw? Oh, why did my price go lower even though it says ambiguous? I drew the one shift bigger than the other one. That's why it wasn't ambiguous. See, that's the kind of discovery process you need to go through. That's called studying. Okay, this memorizing something you don't understand, that's called playing a game because it's worked in the past. You got trained by lazy teachers, lazy professors to do something, right? It happens. I heard, well, no, I better not get into that. Time is scarce. Some people not doing their job. It's just amazing. Okay, well, I'm a little too fast here. Okay, so we've been over this several times in the last chapter. But this is the one that the second one. Quantity demanded changes only when the price of the good changes. No, that's not right. Now, quantity demanded does change when the price of a good changes. Yes, that's true. Not only. Right? We showed that up here. Right? If there's a demand shift, the quantity demanded is now higher at the same price as it compared to where it used to be. I have to talk to my friend Alex again on this. I'm lucky I didn't send that email about, you should have put a time dimension on your x-axis, 1 million barrels per day. He'd write back, just like one of you pointed out. Remember, the fun never ends unless you let it, and a fragile ego is a serious learning disability, so I'll have some fun with it rather than hang my head on making that goofy mistake. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so that's our second graph, right? New supply curve. More is available at the same price. Quantity demanded will increase because of the new lower price. Now, because I'm going through these slides, hopefully I didn't deaden what we had going there with all those questions, but okay, I'm just going through this to try to remind myself of where else I need to say something that I might otherwise come up in conversation. Okay, so increase in demand changes the quantity supplied. See, now here's something that can be fun, might be overstating it a little bit, but this is a graph of the world price for a particular type of petroleum. Every one of these points on this line is the result of a combined demand and supply shifts, right? Because that's what determines the price. A higher price means that the demand increased faster than the supply increased, or the supply increased faster than the demand decreased. Okay, so that's what's going on here. And one of the questions here asks about that little peak there, a little after 1990. Anybody remember why that is? This is the part that scares me, because to me this seems like yesterday, and most of you weren't yet born. I'm getting old. But 1991, before most of you were born. That was the Gulf War. Remember the first George Bush from your history classes, hopefully. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and as a result we decided, no, we're not going to let that stand, and pushed him back out of there. That was before the second George Bush invaded Iraq. The first George Bush refrained from going past just getting the Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. So what was going on here? This little peak there, the one that's unlabeled, this past 1990, is the supply decreased. Why did it decrease? Is because mostly, well, there was some decrease because Kuwait was off the grid, so to speak. But there were others that took their petroleum off the market in advance of that, or it happened pretty suddenly. So while it was going on, why? Well, because they thought their petroleum would be worth more later. So there's both the destruction effect of taking a major seller out of the market, Kuwait. Right? They were are still a major producer of oil. And then there's the expectation shifter, where it's, because of this, petroleum prices are likely to keep going up And so if I'm a holder of petroleum, maybe I should just leave it in the ground a little longer and sell it later at a higher price rather than now at a lower price. And plus, at the initial part of the crisis, I guess, call it, after the invasion had first occurred, a lot of us consumers, not you because you weren't alive yet, but a lot of us consumers said, the last time this happened, prices shot way, way, way up, right? That big old peak in the middle there, 1979, the Iranian hostage crisis. Last time this happened, prices shot way up. I'm going to go fill up my gas tank. And so a lot of people went out and filled up their gas tank just in case there were some, major supply interruptions. You'd be surprised how much storage capacity there is in the millions of gas tanks rolling around on our highways. And if suddenly the average level of gas tank goes up by 4 or 5 gallons, suddenly that's a major increase in demand. And so all of that was going on, that little peak there, causing some increase in price. Yeah, go back to notice the end there. It quit a little bit before now, didn't it? Now, what was the big deal in 2005, if you remember, why the price shot way up? And actually, there's 2 things. We were at war with Iraq, or in Iraq. But what was the other one? You've been reading a 10-year anniversary of what lately? Some of. No, you're not reading much news lately. Katrina. Okay, and also that same year, 2005 was a really bad hurricane year. There was Katrina and Rita, both in the Gulf, both Category 5s, not when they landed, but pretty close. And so that wiped out a lot of oil rigs in the Gulf. Okay, so that reduced the supply of oil, and that shot it up to close to $4 a gallon. But see, the price system worked, right? But it said, hey, you better want to go where you're going to go really bad, right? Because now it's going to be really expensive because we're short on petroleum, right? And a couple of hurricanes wiped out a lot of the production. Okay, but there were no shortages, were there? If you wanted fuel, you filled up your tank. You might have cried afterwards, right? $70 or $80 to fill up your gas tank, but you got it done. You got to where you were going if you wanted to badly enough. See, that's where in the book, I can't remember if there's one of those coming up here, where it says the upper part of the demand line, that's for people that want it really bad. And the lower part, that's people, oh yeah, it was earlier, the president's demand, right, Air Force One, high consumer surplus. Okay, so the price of oil went up to exclude all the low-value uses of petroleum back in 2005 and limiting the consumption through the price mechanism to only those that were really high-value uses. Okay. 20 minutes left. Rather than to do more PowerPoint slides, because I think I've covered most of them in our discussion here. So let me go over to the PowerPoint, the top hat slides, questions. And it's always an important part of that journey through that river in Africa is, gosh, I think I got it. And these questions like, whoops, I don't got it as well as I thought I did. All right, well, let's kind of, okay, all right. Everybody's kicking in here at the end. All right, well, The right answer is A. Well, we got a ways to go here. Got some work to do. See, now this is oh. Disable some. Suddenly a lot of people, okay, well the original one was, see this is one of the reasons I don't have those more than one attempt after telling you your score. See, because that doesn't tell me anything what somebody knows how to do. It's not an assessment anymore, then it's just a ladder. And that's fine for the learning curve, that needs to be a ladder. Just kind of ratchet your way up. But anyway, it's A. This is one of those questions that if I were to ask it on the final, and I probably will, if somebody got it wrong, I'd be tempted just to flunk them from the whole course. Now, I'm not going to do that. But this is so important to understand what the price system does, how the price system functions, how it makes our economy work, that in a way it would be justified that if you didn't know the answer to this, you wouldn't have learned a darn thing in a microeconomics course. And it's early in the course, and some of you haven't studied the chapter 1 through 4 material yet, so we're both learning from this. But it's definitely, you can put the question back up here again. Get it exactly in the, oops. Central to the efficiency of market economies is the short-run role of price change to, what price change had better do is to resolve the shortages and surpluses that result from demand shifts and restore equilibrium. Because otherwise, we're going to be in a serious world of hurt in our ability to go out and do our shopping to maintain our lives. We've gotten so used to just going out to get things and we expect them to be there. Well, that's not the case unless the price system is working. There'll either be, this is what happened in the former Soviet Union. Folks would go shopping because the government there set all the prices. And sometimes the prices were etched right in the commodity. So an exchange student from Russia once came up and showed me a fork that she had purchased in Russia. It said 5 kopecks on it. It was etched into the metal. Okay, so talk about etched in stone on a price. But there, when you go shopping, because the government sets the prices rather than the market, most of the shelves are empty because there's a shortage of it. And there's a few things, there's just a huge pile of stuff. Shortages, surpluses. So central to the sheer functionality of an economy is that price change rations out what's available, which means clears the market, which means makes the quantity demanded and quantity supplied the same. Does anybody want to talk about any of the other choices why you thought that was a better one? We can. No? Nobody wants to confess or have it clarified why something else wasn't a good answer? All right, time is scarce, so we'll move on to the next one. Now, I'll warn you here, I'm doing a little bit of brainwashing here, so beware. You're about to be led into a conclusion that goes against 150 out of 150 of our state legislators. Yeah, how many things can you imagine that aren't just illegal, that aren't immoral, if not heinous, that all the state legislators would agree on? Not much. That last answer, too, is if I didn't disable submissions and a bunch of people switched. No, it's not going to affect your grade, how well you do on these top ed questions. Take them seriously just to test yourself and to provide me some feedback without having to raise your hand. No reason to change your answer at the last minute if I forget to click here, although I think I'll remember now. All right, so here we poll the audience, and indeed, B is the correct answer. All right, so you're locked in now. A shortage means that the current price is too low. It should go up, right? Market efficiency would be improved at a higher price, right? The equilibrium price maximizes the gains from trade. The equilibrium price minimizes waste, all that stuff that you read. Okay, so if there's a shortage, the price is too low, and it may be persistently too low because there's a price ceiling, or it might be just temporarily too low, as in the case of this fourth graph and the first graph, where, okay, it's going to go up once it gets that, there's not enough signal out there. All right, so Here's the one that I was hinting at later on, earlier. As you start to study for the test, please study a lot before Monday night, because otherwise you won't have any way of getting help when you discover that you've been on that river in Africa. Right? You'll get into the study and say, whoa, I didn't get this. I thought I did. Yeah, that's the river in Africa thing. And if it's Monday night, Tuesday morning, first thing, that's the test. Too late. That'll be when you and I are both glad that it's that the first test has a relatively low value. Oh, by the way, here's the thought. I don't want to penalize you for being brilliant immediately. Okay? So if it helps your grade to have the tests equally weighted, I'll do that. But for many of you, it won't help you. So I'll leave it the way it is as the default. But if I look at your score at the end of the semester and say, Joe's final numbers would be better if I had weighted test 1, 2, and 3 equally rather than unequally, the way the syllabus says, I'll do that. I'll fix that. Okay, so a little stronger incentive there. That's one of the big ideas in chapter 1, right? Incentives matter. All righty. Disable submissions. The answer is D. Surplus of vehicles. Now, see, this is one of the reasons you need to draw the graph. Surpluses and shortages are things that we consume and produce. We don't consume and produce vehicles on the highway. We produce and consume highway space. Right? When you get on the highway, you're saying, I demand some space on this highway to get from where I'm going. And the highway department's trying to figure out how much supply they should provide. And in some cases, depending on how you construct highways, you can make some short-run changes in the capacity. I'll give you an example of that. On the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, they changed which direction several lanes go between morning and evening. Okay, so in the morning, when most people are going south from across the bridge into San Francisco, a bunch of the usually northbound lanes are changed temporarily to be southbound lanes, right? So the supply is increased. Okay, and then when most people are headed home across the bridge going north, if the highway is in the middle of the day, it's divided equally. Some of the otherwise southbound lanes are diverted in it. But most highways, it's a hassle to do that, and it's dangerous. People get used to going one way or the other, and so we don't have variable direction for lanes. And so depending on population growth and how big they built the highway in the first place, there's a shortage at rush hour. The quantity demanded by people trying to get on the highway is more than the amount of space that's there. And if there's a wreck, right, then there's even less space, right? And so then there's a really mega traffic jam. Okay, so the wrongness of answer A is a lesson in quantity demanded. I mean, in markets, always having something up here that specifies what's being demanded and what's being supplied. Right? That first answer could, for a different kind of a market, like the labor market, when we talk about the minimum wage, it could be a shortage of jobs. That would be wrong too. Yeah, the minimum wage does create a shortage of jobs. But people don't buy and sell jobs. There isn't a supply of jobs and a demand for jobs. There's a supply of labor, right? That's what you and I are selling. Okay, and then there's a demand for labor. That's what the businesses are buying. Okay, so there's a surplus of labor as a result of increases in the minimum wage, not a shortage of jobs per se. The shortage of jobs issue is somewhat relevant in that shortages always decrease quality, and that's what will happen to jobs if there's a surplus of labor. Is the nature of work will become a little less pleasant. As the seller, I mean, the business is saying, no, we can hire as many workers as we want. They're falling all over each other trying to get jobs at the new higher minimum wage. So we don't have to treat them nice. We don't have to let them have free food. We don't need to give them breaks. Make you work twice as hard for the extra money that they have to pay. If you don't like it, leave, and they'll hire somebody else the next day. Okay? But other than that, you should talk about the surplus of labor, and in this case, it's the shortage of highway space. Okay, so a traffic jam is a highway capacity shortage, and you know from the previous question what you concluded there. So let's go on to the next question. See, these kind of questions are, where the rubber hits the road for going to school and learning things, is to be able to extrapolate your knowledge of general concepts into new areas. Here's what I learned about things being true in general. Now here's a specific case where we have a problem. Too much traffic at certain times. Right answer is A. Ooh. See, now you know why the Texas legislature, being politicians, right, and voting based on what people think and expect, why they voted 150 to nothing to ban rush hour road tolls. Right? It's because this is, see, in the highway capacity, I mean, we haven't discussed anything about public goods, but a public good isn't something that's produced by the public necessarily. It's something that you can't exclude people from. Well, there are toll roads around, right? So you can't exclude people from things, and you can charge people for using toll roads. So it's not a public good. Let's see. And additional construction might be worth more than it costs, but let's think about this. What we have out there on I-10 and 1604 is called a freeway. So the demand for it is at a price per unit of 0. Right? No additional cost other than the wear and tear on your vehicle and gasoline to be there on that highway compared to any other time. Is additional construction free? No. So the demand at a price of free is not going to be there if we charge people what it costs for the additional construction, right? See one of these graphs? Free, that's down here. Marginal cost, that's way up here. Okay, so the additional highway capacity may be in demand at a price of 0 that we charge now, but it might not be in demand at the price that it would cost to provide it, right? Which is definitely not 0, right? It costs money to construct highways. So, you see, I told you I would just kind of drag you into this, although I didn't drag very many people into the right answer. But hey, you said, okay, or some of you said at least, and hopefully all of you believe to be the case now, shortage means the price is too low, right? And a traffic jam is a shortage. Because that means that during rush hour, the price is too low, right? If you believe those two things, this one follows. And since it's not a public good and we can't charge users of it directly, we could implement a road toll. They have the scanners up there and they could make you have a pass, like the kind of pass you can use for regular, real 24/7. So I'm talking about a toll road. I'm talking about tolling a regular road, but only during rush hour. Because, see, it's only during rush hour there's a shortage. It should be a freeway during the middle of the night. Wait a minute, it still costs money. How can it be a freeway? Well, we pay for it through gasoline taxes, right? Charging for it indirectly through gasoline taxes is appropriate for the capacity that we need in the middle of the night. It's got to still be there. People still use it, but there's no shortage of it. No shortage means price, right? You're not in anybody's way. You're not slowing anybody else down when you get on the highway at midnight, right? No opportunity cost. I'm deliberately using all the terms that you should be getting familiar with. That's the reason I'm doing this. All those terms. What is he talking about? Raise your hand if you don't know what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to get at here. These are words that we've been going over, terms. You should now be able to understand them in conversational use. That's the purpose of this course, is to make you an economically literate person so you can move forward with things like careers in business that require that. Okay, so a rush hour, what would a rush hour toll do? It would reduce the quantity demanded at that time, right? People would take different routes, they would carpool, they would go at different times rather than at that time. They would sort themselves according to, hey, I really need to be on the road right now to go where I'm going. Or no, I don't really need to be. Low value users, high value users, we've talked about that. Right? And the low value users say, no, don't want to do it another time. See, the N word doesn't work. I use it carelessly. Need. It's not a need, it's a want. Right? But some of them are very high value wants. And they're going to say, I gotta, my job starts at 8 in the morning, gotta be there. This is the only way to get there based on where I live, which is a choice in the long run, right? If the toll's high, maybe you choose to go at a different, go relocate yourself to avoid paying it. There's all kinds of different ways to avoid paying it if you're a low value demander, right? And then the high value demanders get there at 70 miles an hour, right? Or 65 miles an hour, the speed limit. Because the low value demanders are off the road and not in their way anymore. And the capacity, 1 or 2 lanes is good enough at midnight, right? The freeway, right? Plenty of room to get where you're going at the speed limit. We don't need 3 or 4 lanes at midnight. When do we leave lane 3, 4, 5, and so on? At rush hour. So who should have to pay for those additional lanes? The rush hour users. How do they do that? With the toll. See, so there's a conversational use of all the stuff that you need to understand. So you've got a little signal of which of those, what do you think? That means you're a little weak on some of those terms. And I know you're waiting till the last minute to study, but if you did a little bit of the studying along the way, or by Tuesday, a lot of that should come into focus. And that should be your test going forward if you're ready for the test. Show up at MS 104 on Tuesday, not here.
It says that